Hey everybody, JJ here, back again for another episode of Zoom Networking. It's Wednesday, September 21st, and we have a young man on today as our guest speaker who is a personal friend of mine. Our network, our guest speakers are, your network is not only your net worth, but as you network, you want to build relationships. And when you meet really valuable people, smart, intelligent people like this guy, you want to make friends with these people. My good friend Javier, I know he's JJ Nunez. Javier JJ Nunez. How are you, Javier?
Good. I wanted to first say thank you to everyone spending the time to educate yourself and network. It's something that changed my life from the beginning. So,
well, brother, we're just glad to have you, man. I mean, it's funny. We were talking about networking earlier. And, we hear these quotes, your network is your net worth. One of my favorite ones that people say, oh yeah, business is about who you know, but it's not, it's about who knows you. And that's where building your network comes in. Networking leads to visibility. Visibility leads to opportunity. If you're not visible, you're invisible. Opportunity walks right past you. By my being visible and networking, I've come to meet you and to know you. And I'm thrilled that you're here today, my friend. Really quick, what part of the country are you from?
So I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm located in Northern Virginia. So the Tysons, Fairfax County area. That's maybe 5 minutes from the Maryland border and about 10 to 15 minutes from D.C. So I'm like right in the center of the tri-state area.
Very cool. Now, is that anything like what they call NOVA?
Yes, it is. Northern Virginia. NOVA stands for Northern Virginia.
Okay. And I've heard of DMV. Is that something similar?
Absolutely, JJ. So DMV is pretty much the three tri-state area. So DC, Maryland, and Virginia, DMV.
See, in California, we call that the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Same thing here. Same thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, what did you do before you became a real estate investor? I mean, were you raised in the DMV area? Are you from there originally?
Yeah. So a little bit about my past. I grew up, my parents came here from South America. We lived in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath in Coolmore in a very rundown neighborhood in Northern Virginia. I'm a first-generation college student. However, in 2005, before I went to college, my parents didn't have money, right? It was right when everything was going on with the market. So I took off to the military. I did 8 years as an airborne ranger, stationed out of Vicenza, Italy. So I'm a highly decorated soldier. I left the military because my passion has always been like trying to figure out like pretty much growth, like where I come from, where did my family, why did they change countries? Why did they have lots of money, back in the 1990s? And then once I took off to the military, why was my father asking me for money? I try to figure out business, money, where it comes from, who pays who, how do banks work? And I realized I needed more education. So I took a stance in not re-enlisting once I did my 8 years. And I said, I'm going to use the GI Bill to continue with my education. So I left the military when I was 25 in 2013. And I studied business. I'm not going to lie. I studied with business administration. Then the following semester, I changed to business management. And then I continued with my journey at the University of Virginia Commonwealth University, so VCU out of Richmond. That's where I was presented to the different educational platforms, out of Richmond, Virginia. I got to meet Mastery Fortune members, and that's where I continued my growth. So I studied real estate, and I particularly got a degree in finance and entrepreneurship.
Cool.
So I joined my senior year in college, Fortune Builders Mastery, out in 2016.
Wow.
And that's when I realized okay, wow, so there is money to be made. I see the proof. I'm already networking with the people. I was going to local RIA meetings when I was my senior year in college. And I moved back up to the Northern Virginia area because I realized I didn't have enough income. I worked with some investors out of Bethesda, Maryland, which is about 15 minutes away from my hometown. And they were flipping notes. So they were buying like 5 to 10, 15,000 notes at a time. And I was servicing those notes. Here I am like trying to learn the process, and we were foreclosing on properties. We were doing REOs. We were doing loss mitigation. I was in that loss mitigation department. So I quickly networked with bankruptcy attorneys, foreclosure attorneys, tax attorneys, and I started to understand a little bit more about the business. Fantastic. Due to the conflict of interest, that's when I said, I need to get my license. I already understood the business, the model.
Now, was this your broker's license, your agent license? What license did you get?
So I first started with my real estate agent license.
Okay.
And the reason I got my license is because I already understood ARV. I already understood like the fortune builder model. Like I did the curriculum. However, I needed to pinpoint my ARV. I realized that buying at the wrong price is going to set you apart, whether you make money or not. And I realized if you pinpoint your ARV, that's, you're going to have a solid deal pretty much. So in order to pinpoint my ARV, that's how I became I became a real estate license because of that.
Okay.
I got real estate.
When you started doing that, is that, like your topic today is, can it be pre-foreclosure and loss mitigation negotiating? So obviously all the things you've done, is this now your expertise? Is this your wheelhouse?
100%. So this is how I get most of my listings. This is how I've got a couple deals. This is how I've assigned a couple deals. So this is my niche, because I was in the loss mitigation department on the other end. So now this is exactly what I do, and I do it all over the country.
So you're not just in your area, so do you have an LLC that does this? Do you do this out of an LLC individually, or how does that work?
Yes. So I have an investment platform LLC, which I started through the curriculum. So I use most of my operations through there. And like you said, like management as well. And I also started a separate LLC with my brother, a flooring business in the construction side. So along with getting my real estate license, I also got my Class A contracting license. That way I'm not paying the contractor top dollar. And I'm I'm going through that right now. Boy, I'm getting nickel and dimed by this guy doing a demo in my house. It's crazy. So yeah, let's do you have a full blown? Do you want to go back and forth, just talk about your topic today, or do you have a presentation you want to get into? Or yes, so I have 2 presentations, but I just wanted to let everybody know, like, hey, like I started this when I was young, and what you put into it is what you get. Don't get me wrong. Like the first couple of years, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what subject to meant. I didn't know what a wraparound deed of trust was. I didn't know what creative financing was. None of this stuff. This was all brand new. And coming from a military background, I didn't have Facebook or MySpace and none of that stuff. So I was never online. And now because of this, it changed my life. I'm always visible. So I'm always networking with people, from the next contractor to the next painter. Like I go to Home Depot and talk to all the different contractors. I go to professional meetings and environments. I builder networks. I'm networking as much as I can. Everybody that I talk to, they already have a face to my name. So that is so huge. Mm-hmm, absolutely. And your most important thing would be your county officials. And your county officials are the most important. So, so that's kind of my background. Why don't we get right into so you've got 2 presentations but you're going to give us one today? No, I'm going to give them both today. The 2 different sections. The first section is going to be like how to analyze a deal. Okay. What's a deal? So there's going to be questions at the very end of that. The second part of the presentation is like half of that presentation is towards you guys to learn the entire process and understand the different ways of doing the business. And then the second portion of that would be the negotiating portion with the institution or the seller. So you'll be able to ask questions on both ends of those presentations.
Awesome. Javier, I'm gonna slide out for a second. You can share your screen. And my friend, take it away.
My name is Javier Nunez, and this is here at JJ's Mastermind Networking Group. And we're going to go over how to analyze a deal. So the first things we're going to talk about are comps. What are comps? CMA, repairs, and offer. So whenever you're doing comps are comparables. Basically, what you want to do with the comparables is you want to get closed transactions. So houses that have already been sold. And the reason you want to get closed transactions is because there's been an exchange of currency. So if the homeowner wanted $1, they received $1 from the buyer. And that's how you get the comparables. As far as like your criteria for the comparables, you want to try to be as close as possible to your subject property. Your subject property is going to be the property that you're interested in acquiring. So the best rule of thumb is to do their beds and baths and square footage. And depending on how many closed transactions are nearby, you might have to extend your search to include lot size, and then square footage above grade or below grade, depending on where you're at in the US. So similar homes, sold listings last 30 to 60 days, and then your valuation based on renovated homes. So the sources of valuation, depending whether or not you have access to the master listing service, you can also get different multitude of variations of valuation from different sources, such as Redfin, Trulia, Zillow. County records will be the most accurate. If you have access to an MLS or if you're networking with a real estate agent, that you could potentially get MLS access. And also different CRMs have different valuation platforms as well. So depending on where you're at in the US, Redfin is most like the best in like certain areas. Trulia is very effective, like in the southern states. Zillow in your main states, MLS is the most accurate, and then county records is 100% accurate. So we're going to go over questions and answers. Maybe we have a few questions from clients or from students who want to learn how to get access to the MLS or how you typically get the valuations or how you pull comps. And we're going to try to keep this brief.
Risa and Christina, you are on with Javier. What's your question?
Yeah, I have a question. I've been looking at some deals from like wholesalers, and I don't understand how they come up with the ARV. I don't know how accurate those ARVs are. So how, I mean, so I'm like, well, how are they coming up with these numbers? Because I know they're not contractors, and a lot of them are quite new to the game. So I'm just wondering, how do I?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And thank you for asking. So ARV is after repair value. So that's technically an art based on the comparables that recently got sold in that market for fully renovated property or as-is properties. So when wholesalers are getting the ARV value, that's an art based on what they think the ARV value is.
Okay.
However, I do suggest that if you're working with wholesalers, that they provide you a list of similar properties, and you'll be able to do the valuation based on that. Your ARV is going to be completely different than any one of us here in the Zoom chat.
What I've been doing is I've been taking the address and I've been myself going and pulling comps. And my husband used to build homes, so he knows about all that. He has a good idea of what costs would be. So that's what I've been doing on my own, but it's just not coming up. It's like completely off the numbers. So I'm just.
Yep. So to answer your question, it's always going to be off because your ARV is going to be completely different than the next investor. So depending on how much potential you can put in the property is going to be, your ARV could be $1.05, and my ARV could be closer to $1.10 because I'm able to put a little bit more bells and whistles, or vice versa. Okay. So the wholesaler's ARV might be close to 90 cents. So you always have to do the due diligence to do the comparable analysis based on your fully renovated property.
Okay, that's always going to change depending on, like, if I want to put like marble instead of granite and things of that nature. So okay, I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to go more into detail at the following presentation based on what you want to be a comparable.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Good question.
I've got a question on comps and ARV, and you kind of answered that. Everyone's going to have a different ARV. But in helping us get to our ARV, we have to pull comps. Mm-hmm. And comps are pulled in a number of ways. We can look at some values off of some of the websites that you mentioned. And then obviously we can look and see what similar properties sold for within a recent time period.
Correct.
Now, is there other ways of getting comps besides those?
Yes. So what I did before I got MLS access, or before I was able to pinpoint my ARV, is I would ask about 4 to 5 different agents. I would give them the address and say, hey, I'm working with the seller currently right now. We're about to go under contract. I wanted to know if you can pull the comps for this property. What are properties sold on the retail side based on this criteria? And they would give me, 5 different answers or 4 different answers. And then I would be able to take a look at that. Some real estate agents will provide you a list of the properties where they, which properties they use as comps, and you'll be able to like cross them out, or, modify it if you need to.
That sounds great.
This is the table of contents that we're going to be going. And like I said, this presentation is going to be solely, half the presentation is for the educator or the investors, like-minded individuals like everybody here on this Zoom call are trying to learn the business. And the second portion of the presentation is going to be negotiating. So negotiating with the seller and or the institution or a loss mitigation agent, or even a real estate agent if they're selling their house. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about would be the investor roadmap, just a brief overview of the entire process and how it works. The next thing we're going to talk about is foreclosure options. What options does the seller have in regards to when they're in pre-foreclosure? The next topic, which is my favorite, is going to be your seller objections. These seller objections are pretty much based on what the seller is like. How did you get my number? They're going to have objections. Who are you? How can you help me? And, there's only so many questions that they can ask you because there's an answer to every question. And then the last step would be pretty much just another overview based on the steps to foreclosure, the actual process with the institution. And then the second half of the presentation, once we finish all those, you'll be able to see it. I'm going to have another table of contents for the negotiating part. So we're jumping right in. So the investor roadmap that you want to follow would be this one. First, you want to identify a pre-foreclosure lead. So identifying a pre-foreclosure lead, you can buy lists, you can get lists from people. You want to, I'm going to be talking about it later in the presentation, but you can get the lists with cell phone numbers, with email addresses, or even Facebook information, so you're able to network and contact with the seller. You want to make sure you're scrubbing your lists as well, because not all information is accurate, if you remember from the previous presentation. All right, the next step would be to contact the seller. So once you have the information in front of you, once you did your desktop analysis, you want to contact the seller. There's many different ways you can contact the seller. Like I said, based on the information that you have, you can contact the seller via direct message, via cell phone, via voicemail, drip campaign, email campaigns, Facebook ads, or physically meeting. My first year in real estate, what I did is I would get the pre-foreclosure leads like in my cities, and I would knock on their doors Saturday morning. Hey, my name's Javier. I'm willing to help. And that's how I started understanding more about the neighborhood in my market. The next step would be to contact the institution. So when contacting the institution, what you're trying to do is you already have rapport with the seller and you already have identified your pre-foreclosure lead. So when you're contacting the institution, you're going to contact the institution as a family friend. And I'll explain that in further detail. That way you're able to purchase the property based on the information that the seller gave you. And depending what the seller told you, you'll be able to confirm or deny whether the information of the seller is correct or not. The next thing you're going to do as an investor is you're going to send an offer. And I'll explain to you how to formally send an offer to the institution who owns the property. And the last thing you're going to do is you're going to coordinate closing. You can have transaction coordinators help you with this, or you can do it yourself. But there are a couple of things that need to happen before you come to closing, such as get deeds of trust filled out. Like if you're doing a subject to, you might have to do a wraparound deed of trust. So there's different documents that are going to be needed in order to properly close on the property. So the foreclosure options, remember I was saying that these are the options for the seller. So whenever you're contacting the seller, you're going to say, hey, my name is Javier with JRE Home Investments, and I'm reaching out to you because your property came across my desk, and I wanted to know if you are currently still in the pre-foreclosure status and how I can help you. You have a multitude of different options in order for you to keep your house. I'm not going to go directly into, I'm going to give you a cash offer. It's honestly never worked even for me. So there's 8 different options that the seller has. And, the first 6 options will help them keep the house. And then the last 2, they have to get rid of the house. So the 6 options would be like a personal loan. Mr. Seller, have you considered a personal loan? Are you able to have a family friend give you a personal loan to pay off your deficiency balance? Deficiency balance is the amount of mortgage payments that they fell back in the rear. The next option would be a loan modification. Have you considered a loan modification? Loan modification is pretty much lowering their mortgage payments so they're able to essentially make that payment. So for instance, if the homeowner's paying $500 in mortgage and they're falling behind in mortgage, a loan modification will allow them to start paying $200. So there's 2 loan modifications approved for every life of the loan. So in case one of the homeowners fell behind and they already have 2 loan modifications. So when you contact the institution, they say there's already 2 modifications done. It has to be a cash deal, meaning they have to come up with the funds or they're going to foreclose on the property. The next one would be rental. Mr. Seller, have you considered renting it? Is the rental market enough for you to pay for the mortgage payments? No. Okay. Would you like me to rent it for you? You could do a lease to option. You could do a sandwich lease option. You could rent it to the homeowner. Mr. Homeowner, JRE Home Investments is going to pay you $2,000 and it's going to come directly from me to you. And then I'll take care of the tenants myself. And then I could put Airbnb, or there's many different ways I can get the income for the property. The next thing would be agent listing. Have you considered putting it on the market? Talk about the different pros and cons of having an agent list the property. Some of these properties, I'm not going to lie, are habitable. So it'll be best in their best interest to list it as an agent. And if they say hey, I have an agent that works on my team. And if you're already a real estate agent, then that's the course that you want to take. However, if the house is not habitable, meaning there's a roof growing out, or the roof is falling apart, there's a tree growing through the kitchen, the foundation is jeopardized, there's water leaks in the basement, structure issues, anything of that nature, no institution or bank that I know of is going to finance that loan. Therefore, it cannot be a retail value price. So the seller is going to have to sell that property at a discount. And this is where we come in as an investor. So the main thing that you want to do is educate the clients. The next thing I want to talk about would be okay, well, have you considered creative financing? So you can give them a cash offer, which they get, X amount, 40 cents to the dollar. Have you subject to creative financing? You could get 50, 60 cents to the dollar. So there's different ways that you can make this work, depending on how much equity they have. Subject to might be the best option for them. And also, from my experience, subject to is the least cost effective. So there's ways that I can show you guys how to subject to a property without having everybody come up with transfer taxes and everything else. The next option would be the JV with the seller. Well, Mr. Seller, if you're not trying to get rid of this property, you don't need the cash right now. Would you like to JV on this together? So what you're telling them is you're going to JV on with this property on them together. Once you take control of the property, then you can say, well, you can get 20% profit. I'll get 80%. And then you'll be able to work that deal that direction. So technically, you're going to renovate the property with in regards to listing the property on the back end. The next thing you're going to talk about would be the cash offer. That's the last thing that I kind of mentioned to the client. because they understand at the end of the day, this phone call is going to be, hey, I'm a cash investor. But if you give them all the different options, the first 6 options on how they can keep their house, you're educating them and they're going to be interested. So the cash offer is not going to sound so, I guess, too direct. And you can always tell them, and the other option is if you don't like the cash offer, have you considered bankruptcy, and educate them on that as well. Remind them that, bankruptcy, chapter 7, chapter 11, or chapter 13 is not going to help your situation. It's just a short-term solution for a long-term fix. Bankruptcy, if anything, is just going to delay the entire process for the foreclosure process. And additionally, it's going to add additional costs to the debt that you already owe. So the more you educate the client, they'll be able to, feel better off with you. So those are the different foreclosure options that you mention to the seller when you're on the phone or in person. The next slide we're going to go over would be seller objections. And this is my favorite. And the reason is because most homeowners, they're going to receive a call, they're going to get your flyer, and, they're going to want to challenge you. However, you need to have objections or some scripts for some of the seller objections that the homeowner has. I'm going to be going over 5 different objections that are the most common that I hear all the time. And sometimes they cut me off right away, or sometimes it happens within the conversation or when I meet them in person. The first one would be like, how did you get my phone number? Well, I say, well, Mr. Seller, my company gets all information from public records at the county courthouse records. And what I do is I reach out to people in similar situations as yours. Would you like me to tell you a little bit more on how many options you have to save your house? That way you don't lose your house. And then just go from there. So you pretty much let them know, like, hey, I work with multiple different companies and they give me some of their resources. And I also, oh, by the way, it's also public information. Okay. Can you buy it and rent it back to me is something that I hear all the time, and you say, like, well, unfortunately, Mr. Seller, ethically, we cannot do that. Some investors do this, but they're going to do this with the intention of evicting you out. So, that's something that I pretty much educate them on, that it's not going to look good on their record. There's ways that you can get this, going. We can settle on your house. We can pay off your car debt. You can pay off your credit cards. It's going to be off the sales price. However, that'll allow you to breathe, and get your credit back up once you, once we start renovating the property, and then your credit's going to go back up to normal. And then by then you'll be able to qualify for any rental or a smaller home. And that way they can continue with their movement. The next thing would be, I get this all the time too. Where homeowners are going to say, I don't have any problems with my mortgage. And I say, okay, great. Well, sometimes our records are not updated. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a problem with your mortgage? And then don't say anything at all after that. They're going to start talking and they're going to start opening up to you. A lot of them are going to give you some pushback, but you got to remind them, like, this is what I do for a living. So your property came across my desk. This is exactly what I specialize in. And I'm here to help you and answer some of your questions. The next question would be the 4th question that I always get as a objection from sellers is, I'm going to just declare bankruptcy. And based on what I said, bankruptcy is just a temporary solution for a long-term fix. And it's just you're going to end up adding to your debt on what you already owe. Foreclosure fees and costs, depending on where in the States you are, can go anywhere from $2,000 to about like $18,000, like in California, depending on where you're at in the States. The 5th question that most sellers ask me are, my mortgage broker said he is going to be able to refinance my loan. I said, great. Did they pre-approve you, or have they actually received a loan commitment from the actual bank? Have you read the documents? So when they say they're trying to refinance their loan, what they're really talking about is their bank approved them for a loan modification. However, all loan modifications are completely different. And some have balloon payments within a year. Some have balloon payments within 5 years. And if they can't make that payment, they'll be able to take possession of the property. there's one more. How can I rebuild my credit? This is a really good one because there's credit restoration companies that'll help them rebuild their credit. So say, for instance, they do a subject to deal with you. You can use some of those funds to help them repair their credit. I'm sick and tired of dealing with people like you. Well, when sellers say that, I understand that they're not upset at me. They're already talking to me, and by them saying that, I'll ask them, I was like, well, excuse me, ma'am, have you taken care of the issue? And then that's when they kind of say like, yay, nay, or blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel behind, blah, blah, like, medical issue, blah, blah, blah. And, so don't be afraid to challenge them. One book that really helped me a lot would be Crucial Confrontations and Crucial Conversations. Those two books allowed me to deal and address the issue with sellers as far as objections. This is just another overview of the steps to foreclosure. This is the institution. So when I say institution, I'm talking about not all banks own the notes. The note would be, like the debt that they have to pay back. Most of them are owned by trustees. Some are by private investors. So you got to figure out who is calling the foreclosure on the borrower or the seller. So the first thing is going to be a notice of default. Notice of defaults typically happen 30 to 60 days after they fall behind on mortgage. And that gets registered at the courthouse. Once it gets registered at the courthouse, it's public records. It's letting everybody know that, hey, this person has fallen behind on mortgage. So like I said on the bottom, it says it's recorded at the courthouse. The next thing would be a loan modification, would be an action that the bank is going to try to do with the seller. In this case, the loan modification, when the banks try to offer it to you, at the end of the day, the banks are in their best interest to benefit them. As opposed to when you're trying to do a loan modification with the client, with the seller, you're able to ask them a multitude of questions, and you'll be able to pick the best approach for them. And the bank more than likely is going to say, like 90% of the time are going to say, okay, yeah, we can do that, because now you're negotiating with the bank as opposed to the bank negotiating with the seller. Forbearance plan, this is something that's been coming up a lot. Most clients are getting into forbearance plans and they don't understand what that means. What that means is that you are deferring, so you're moving parts of that payment to the back of the loan and or within 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years based on what that forbearance plan is. So some of those funds don't have to be paid back, but most of them do. You don't want to be in a position where a homeowner says, oh, I did a forbearance plan. Do you know exactly what you signed? So you're able to help them there. Also, the institution is going to try to do a short sale. And what they're going to do is they're going to hire their own agent to list the property. So deed in lieu is very similar to cash for keys. The bank is going to say, okay, why don't you just deed us the property? So give us back the property in lieu of foreclosure. All right. So those are the steps. All right. So now this is the second portion of the presentation. So this is mainly for negotiating with loss mitigation and or the seller. So this is kind of what works effectively for me. I contact the seller. Your first impression should be your best approach. Try to get them in front of you when you're talking to them. But more than likely, if it has to be through phone call, you want to have everything prepared. You don't want to, don't get me wrong, there's different call dialers that you can use. However, as soon as you get a client on the phone, you should be pulling up all that information. The last thing you want is for them to be like, oh, I'm not Sally. Oh yeah, well, are you related? Or is your wife blah, 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 at this address? And they'll be able to open up more once you're able to, confirm that you're actually there to help them out. Once you contact the seller, the next thing you're going to do is to contact the institution. When you contact the institution, the only way that you're going to be able to talk to the institution is by filling out an authorized third-party information. So whenever you contact the seller, you're trying to get hey, let me help you. And if they say yes to help me, you're going to have them fill out an authorized third-party contact information. It's just 2-page paper that allows you, the investor, to talk directly to the bank. And you're going to do it as a family member. And once you contact the institution, there's a series of questions that you're going to ask them, like what's their interest rate? Have they done loan modifications? Are there currently, or, is by any chance, did they file bankruptcy in the past? And then, they have, okay. Are there any foreclosure fees and costs added apart from, what they have owed, in default? So once you contact the institution, you're also going to confirm the validity of the seller's information that they give you. And when you negotiate with the bank, like I said, banks don't know how to negotiate. They're not in the business to do that. So you'll be able to negotiate. Typically what I do with the bank is I will send them a repair, like itemized repair item. This is what needs to get, this is what needs to get put into the property in order to sell it. Anything black, mold, deficiencies, foundations in the, cracks in the foundation, windows broken, stuff like that, gas meter not installed properly, HVAC not being serviced, in forever. I send pictures of those and I send it to the bank. That way they will allow me to, it'll allow me to negotiate the price in regards of what the bank thinks that the property is worth. So this is the ways you can contact the seller. You can buy lists, you can scrub lists for duplicates, REI Sift, different skip tracing services, Skip Vault, Real Skip, Skip Matrix, Skip Right, TLO, depending if you have access, call lists, like call dialers, call rail, call genie, batch dialer. There's many different options on how you can effectively communicate directly to the seller. All right. Facebook, Instagram. Facebook is also a really good one. Every chance I get on Facebook, I'm always posting stories like, check out this renovated property, check out this distressed property, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 30 cents at a dollar, this deal closed, blah, blah. So when everybody sees my Facebook profile, they say, Javier, the investor. So if you download the seller's contact information in their Facebook, you can add their Facebook page. And they'll be able to see that you're actually like in the business. All right. I don't want to take too much time, but contacting the institution, like I said, you're going to send the authorized third-party info to the institution. You're going to contact the loss mitigation agent and you're going to say, hey, I have an authorized third-party information. Who do I send this to? I want an email and a fax number. And I email them and I fax the authorized third-party contact information the same day. Then I contact them 48 hours later and I say, hey, my name is Javier. I sent an authorized third party about 48 hours later. Can you confirm that it got received? Once they confirm, and they authorize me to be the, the person asking questions, that's when I drill in with the questions. What's the interest rate, blah, 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 like what kind of mortgage is it? And all that other, how far back did they fall back in the rear? Are you proceeding for foreclosure? Like how far along the pre-foreclosure or the foreclosure process are you? Do you already have an attorney assigned? Is the auction tomorrow? Like I ask all these questions to the loss mitigation agent, not customer service, two different things. Then once I get those questions, I always ask them before I hang up. I say, oh, by the way, can you send me a short sale package if you have one? If they have one, they'll send you one, and that'll be just essentially your offer, a packet that they want in a specific way. If the institution or the bank doesn't have a short sale package, then send them just a regular offer, with your initials and everything, how much you're going to EMD and the price. And then once you send that offer, I would wait about 3 to 5 business days, and then either the loss mitigation agent or a short sale agent from the bank is going to call you, or you're going to connect with them and you're going to be able to negotiate price with them. So you're going to say, hey, no, there's mold here. No, the foundation's, like not good here. The roof is not here. There's leaking here, blah, 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 and you'll be able to push down your price more. That way you have a good price on the deal. All right. And I think this is the last slide. negotiate. So when you're negotiating, one book that set me apart that I read is from Chris Voss. It's called Never Split the Difference. Not gonna lie, I didn't know what that book meant at all the first time I read it. I finally read that book again not too long ago, about 2-3 years ago, and it changed the way I position myself when I'm talking to the banks and also the sellers. So with that being said, you're gonna send your offer. You're gonna send your offer along with supporting evidence that the home value is far below the value the institution thinks. Send photos, videos, and contractor estimates, if any, to loss mitigation agent. So I'll have mold remediation teams go out and test for mold. Every house has mold. Just different levels of mold are going to be, whether or not like it's good for you or not. And I'll send that mold report to them and be like, no, hey, this is like a $20,000 fix, and then, so. The next thing, the trustee is going to send you an offer, what they want, and then the servicing company, which the loss mitigation agent is going to be working for. The servicing company is the servicing company. So they service the loan. They make sure you make the payments, they make sure everything. The trustee is the person in charge of that note. So that trustee can get sold from one institution to the next, or be a private investor. So the servicing company is just the middleman in the negotiating. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. You're going to schedule a phone call with that agent, whether it's a loss mitigation agent or a short sale representative agent. Customer service, like I said, they're not licensed to talk or negotiate about any of this stuff. So, and also customer service representatives, like I just sent them the authorized third party and that's it. I never talked to them again because they don't have access to any of the information. So the last thing is you're going to do is we're going to renegotiate. So when the bank sends you a price, you're not just going to be like, okay, fine, I'll take it 90 cents at a dollar. No, you're going to be like, no, this is what the property needs. Here are more pictures. This is an itemized list, and more than likely the bank is not in the business to negotiate. So more than likely that loan's already been paid off. So they're going to be able to drop, that price anywhere from like 20K to like 60K, depending on the location. And like I said, send pictures of mold quotes, if any, have a contractor give you an estimate of the most damaged expenses of the home and send that along with your offer. Yep, that's pretty much it. Any questions and answers? And this next slide is for you guys. I'm more than happy to JV with anybody if they need help. And you can screenshot this. I'm going to put it on there and I'm ready for questions whenever you guys are ready.
Melissa Francis, you are on with Javier Nunez. What's your question?
Thank you. So when you were explaining that, a lot of these banks have already sold off these loans or sold off any of the debt, is there a certain time that would happen and you can realize that you might have more negotiation power versus prior to that debt being sold off, like say December at the end of the year when everyone writes them off, or 30 to 60 days or 90 days when they do write the, debt off? Do you have a practice around that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Melissa. So when I'm talking about like when you're negotiating with the bank, whenever you fill out that authorized third-party information, one of the questions that you're going to ask them is this loan about to be transferred? And that question will tell you whether or not that loan is about to get sold or somebody else already bought it. In the case that you're in mid pre-foreclosure and that loan is about to get sold to the next servicer, some loss mitigation agents and short sale agents, they no longer have access. I used to be in that position where, I'd pull up a loan. I'd be like, hey, you'd have to talk to customer service. And the customer service would tell them like, you need to contact your next institution. But when that loan gets sold, it can happen at any given time. It can happen the day after closing. It could happen right before pre-foreclosure. There's a 60-day grace that it's a federal law that they cannot charge you late fees and they cannot essentially, they cannot actually do anything with the loan.
Because I also think it goes on to the person, right? The person who has the seller who has the mortgage. It actually, they get a 1090 or not a 1099. They get some tax form showing that debt.
Okay, I think we're talking about two different things. When I'm talking about the loan, I'm talking about the trustee, the guy you want to negotiate with. They can sell that loan, that debt, to a different trustee or a different investor or Fannie Mae. So that's what I'm talking about. As And then I think you were talking about.
That's okay. I did get
Okay.
confused on my own, but I have one more question for you. It's regarding loan mods.
Yep.
So, back in 2008, I had helped quite a few family members go through some loan modifications, and they were all very, very different. Like you said, they were all over the spectrum. One would give you, like, Chase handled them a certain way because there was the stamped loan process they had to go through. And then another one was through like a credit union, and all they charged at these loan mods when they did these payments was interest only or something like that. And it was more beneficial for that seller to keep that loan because it was so cheap at that point. Now I have a concern. Is there something that you would recommend to say that they say, well, I want to do a loan mod because you ultimately want to help them. Would you recommend them getting it done? Would you help them? Would you assist them? What would you do at that point if they did want to discuss loan modification with you?
Yeah, so the loan modification, I mean, the only reason why I offer that to the seller is if I want to take possession of the property and JV the property with them. I JV the property, or if I want to do a subject to or lease to option. When I'm doing that, I want my mortgage payments to not be $3,000. I'll help the seller do a loan modification, like right before closing. So to answer your question, there are different loan modifications. So every institution has, I don't know, one loan modification or two different loan modifications. The best question to ask the institution is, do you guys offer streamlined loan modification process? And that's just an easier way of saying, do you have some type of template to do a loan mod?
Right.
You know, some streamlined loan modifications are government based. So the government, you know, is going to make sure that they're doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a very long process when it goes through the government. So I know that could be an issue. You're right.
Not necessarily a long process if you're doing it right. I mean, the government, just like any other government, wants you to cross your T's, dot your I's, and everything's got to be filled out properly. And yeah, that's the hardest part, is the underwriting from that institution.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, Melissa. Thank you.
Javier, I really want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
You know, I want to ask you a question. We kind of talk about this every week. Real estate. Obviously, we have to meet a lot of people. For those that are new to real estate, or those that are maybe new to the social media aspect, what is the importance of networking, do you feel, to the success of someone's journey as a real estate investor?
Yes, so that's a good question, JJ. You know, and I also wanted to say thank you for having me, like as a host. Networking is very important. Let me tell you why. Because in 2016, 2017, when I first started, I wasn't licensed agent, and I didn't have like any type of like LinkedIn. I did have a LinkedIn, but it wasn't like the most visible. Ever since I got my license in real estate, I realized the power of being by networking, and your social media presence is everything. I used to call 10 different bankruptcy attorneys, 10 different tax attorneys, like once a week, and I'd get nothing. And then the minute I started being more active on social media, now when I call up any bank, they look you up, they automatically look you up, and then your response is a lot higher. They'll call you and email you back, you know, like if you have a question, because they know you're in the business doing what you're trying to do. So your social media presence is everything. When I was in the military and I had a TS SCI, I didn't have a profile. I had like maybe 15, 20 friends on Facebook. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think I hit over 2,000 now, and it's still growing. And I'm very selective with who I want to network with. At the end of the day, everybody's going to say they're an investor, right? But who are the ones that are actually doing the work? Who are the ones that are closing the deals? And who are the ones that taking the initiative to learn the stuff, like on a Wednesday night? Those who are the people that you want to connect with. And then, you know, and so, yeah, to answer your question, JJ, social media presence is everything.
Cool. So we're going to wrap this up for now. If you guys are watching the video on YouTube, please like Javier's presentation, and down below, please put some comments in there to your feedback. We'd love to hear it. If you guys are on the call right now, stick around. We're going to have breakout rooms or some live networking. And I want to thank you guys who've been on the call. Thank you for viewing the call. Please look for Javier's presentation. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching it now. But for those of you that are on the call, look for Javier's presentation on YouTube, and look for more guest speakers coming up from the local community, such as Sub 2 with Pace Morby. All right, Javier, I guess we can say off and out for now. Hey, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.